Welcome everyone to Haven of Horror. I am Subject879, joined by Doolittle. We're going to talk about the film From Dusk Till Dawn from 1996, starring George Clooney, Quentin Tarantino, and a bunch of other people you've probably heard of but don't remember. Uh, so
Yeah.
Doolittle, tell us a little bit about the movie we're talking about.
Yeah, so From Dusk Till Dawn is a really interesting kind of genre hybrid. It starts out as a crime drama. It's like pretty dark, you know. Um, Definitely it kind of has like that Quentin Tarantino, Reservoir Dogs kind of feel to it with the tone, and the dialogue. This is a really well written movie, just overall. But it starts out that way. It's about these two guys, the Gecko brothers, I believe is their name, and they are on a crime spree, I believe, and they they're trying to find a hostage because the brother Richie killed um killed and I think raped the hostage. Yes, killed and raped the hostage. So they have to find another hostage, Seth and Richard, and they take in this family as their hostage, and I think one of them is like a faithless preacher. That's like a huge plot point. Is a preacher, and it's a daughter and a son. And they go over to they're trying to cross the border, and they stop off at this bar. I think once they're over the border at that point, and they stop off at this bar, um, and it's run by vampires. So now it's become a horror movie with vampires, and the rest of the movie is them just fending off against vampires. It's a really good movie.
Absolutely, and you mentioned it's well written, and I definitely agree with you.
Mhm.
Quentin Tarantino, who stars in this movie, did has a writing credit if I remember right, didn't he?
Yes, yeah, and this actually started out, I think, as a Tales from the Crypt movie. I think that they were gonna do some Tales from the Crypt. I think like kind of movies, and I think this was planned as like one of the standalone films in that series, but I guess it just didn't work out that way. And then the script ended up with Robert Rodriguez and Tarantino. They're like very good friends, so
Interesting. Yeah, this
yeah,
definitely has a premise that sounds like a Tales from the Crypt movie.
yeah,
Whereas, like when I was watching it this afternoon, the first half is like almost like a Tarantino movie because it's these two outlaws and they're on the run and trying to like get to
hmm
this place, and then the second half just is the shift into, I guess you could say, a Rodriguez movie, but like Rodriguez is really versatile. Um,
hmm
I would say it's like a vampire movie, but I don't think we've ever seen vampire lore quite like this because he's pulling from a specific lore, but I
hmm
forget the name. It's like from Spanish lore, which I'm not very familiar with. Wonderful performances in this movie. Like George Clooney is not the person you think of to play like a bank robbing like scumbag,
yeah.
but he's wonderful.
Well, and this is his breakthrough role in the film. I think this is like his first big thing in a movie because he was an ER for a long time before this. So a very interesting casting.
Yeah, he and Quentin Tarantino play off each other really well in this movie.
hmm
And I wonder how much of Quentin's role like he wrote with him for himself in mind, because his character is like really creepy.
I wouldn't be surprised if he had himself in mind. I'm not entirely sure because I know that Tarantino initially started out wanting to be an actor. Like he went to like school for that. I'm not sure about school, but he took like acting classes. And would like do that stuff. So it's possible, and he has done like other acting stuff. He made a cameo in Desperado, and he also has had other acting experience in his movies as like cameos and stuff like that.
Yeah, I wouldn't have minded seeing him get to do more stuff like this because I don't think he's really that bad in this movie, and he kind
Yeah,
of
he's good.
fits that like sleazy like this guy makes me uncomfortable in scenes.
Yeah, no, he did a really good job with this character. Very, very disturbing character. I think one of my favorite scenes is the scene where Seth confronts Richie about killing and raping their first hostage.
Mhm.
Because like the performances there are so powerful. It's such a horrifying and dark situation, but the performances are so captivating, and it's like the combination between the directing and the acting and the writing. It's really, really well done.
Yeah, I think one of my favorites is the opening scene in the gas station, where you just realize
Yeah.
something's not right with this guy because he shoots the sheriff because he's convinced that the gas station clerk is like mouthing the word "help me," and
Hmm.
you can tell George Clooney's character is just like, I don't know about this, but he rolls with it because he loves his brother, and it's a very
Yeah.
interesting like brotherly dynamic where you can kind of tell who's in charge, but the guy that's in charge also bends over backwards for his obviously disturbed brother.
Yeah, definitely. Like he is taking care of Richard for sure. Um, but it's a very interesting dynamic there. You know, and the part where he becomes a vampire later, I think kind of really cements that relationship in a very interesting way.
And it's, I think, the first time we see any kind of like humanity to George Clooney's character because he doesn't want to have to do what he knows he has to do.
Sure, yeah. Um, I'm trying to think about like other stuff going on because we can talk about I guess like the I think the preacher or faithless preacher played by Harvey Keitel, who does a really good job in this movie. I think that it's interesting casting because I wasn't thinking about this casting for this kind of role for him, but it makes a lot of sense when you really think about it. It's pretty good.
Yeah, he's really good, and I like that he kind of ends up almost mentoring Seth. Seth is George Clooney, right?
Yes,
Okay.
Seth.
Mentoring him because you have that wonderful scene in the bar where Seth is kind of stewing because this guy was disrespectful to him, and the preacher was like, "Are you so much of a fucking loser you can't tell when you've won?" It's great.
Yeah, no, that was a really good scene. Yeah.
We should mention as well
Uh,
that Robert Kurtzman, who not the one that's writes bad shit, but the guy who did the special effects for Evil Dead 2 and directed the movie Wishmaster, has a story credit for this movie, and I think
oh,
that's
interesting.
interesting.
That is really interesting. I wonder if he worked with Tarantino on this previously, and that's why, or maybe he was just. I'm not sure what that is, but that's really cool. But that makes a lot of sense. Probably had a very significant enough role to get a credit like that. Because I know, stuff like that, you have to be someone significant with it.
So I looked it up real quick here, and it says here he conceived the original idea, hired
Oh,
Tarantino to write the script.
well, there you go. That's why he's credited as that.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, Robert Kurtzman, I'm becoming a fan of his. Wishmaster is wonderful.
Oh, that's cool. I should check that out eventually. I've never seen Wishmaster.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I haven't. I have obviously seen the Evil Dead movies.
Yeah.
And he does a really good job with the special effects there. But yeah, so I guess I'll watch Wishmaster later today, maybe. I don't know. We'll see. But
The
yeah.
last thing I want to mention about the preacher, it's interesting, is because I've mentioned to you before, I believe they actually ended up a few years ago making a TV show out of this.
Oh yeah.
And the first season is just this movie, but expanded on into a full, I think, 8 episode season. And
Okay.
Robert Patrick in the show plays that preacher role, and it's just awesome to see him in that kind of role.
Oh, interesting. I didn't expect that casting. But that's really cool. Um, how is that show? How does it compare to the movie?
The first season is the only one that I've seen, and it's good. It does suffer from that we're taking like an hour and a half movie and blowing it up into like an 8 hour story.
I see.
And most of that is in the first half because the first half is just the first half of this movie, but over like 4 hours.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
but the casting is all really good.
Hmm. Yeah, I think the actress from Baby Driver is I think Salma
She
Hayek's character
she is, yeah.
in in the TV show, which interested me because I do like her. She's a good actress. So
Yeah, that's the first place I saw her. And like seasons 2 and 3 are basically sequels to that movie that are connected instead of the like standalone sequels that we got. So like Richie doesn't die. He still becomes a vampire, but he doesn't die and stuff like that.
oh, I see, I see. That's interesting.
But yeah, I guess the other thing we should mention as well with the vampire part is the special effects. For the budget that this movie had, which was about 19.
Stuff as well. Like the that machine gun, that sex machine. It's a sex machine, right?
Yeah.
I always get that wrong. Okay, yeah, sex machine. He has that gun, towards the crotch area, which is in Desperado and was supposed to be used in Desperado, but NC-17 rating allowed that to not happen. So instead, it's used here.
Oh, interesting. Then, so the other thing I wanted to talk about while I'm thinking about it is, so Richie and Seth's ultimate goal is to get to the El Rey, which is in that classic, Tarantino. We're never quite told what the El Rey is. What do you think it is?
I think the El Rey is intended to be kind of like a safe haven for criminals, I think is the idea. I think that's kind of what I have in mind. I never really thought about it. I always just kind of assumed it would just be like this nice, pleasant place, almost like a Nirvana type place for these people like these people, or whatever.
Well, and that's
Um,
how it plays it, but it got me thinking, what is a Nirvana like place for somebody like Seth Gecko?
Probably not very pleasant for us. It's probably really just. I mean, and that's probably why at the end of the movie, I can't remember her name, but she's like, can I come with you? And he's like, basically just like, no, you probably shouldn't.
Hmm.
There are boundaries, I think, that are put in place between people kind of like us within that kind of moral plane in a way. And I think that the movie's doing something with that. Actually, you know what? That is interesting because there is kind of a thing with like evil and morality with this movie to an extent. I'm not sure. I never really thought about it like this because this is a really fun movie, but like there is something going on with like here's like the obvious evil, and then here's like the hidden evil, stuff like that. And Seth Gecko is the protagonist by the end, and it's like, but like he's a super super bad guy. So it's interesting how the movie plays around with that.
That is the one thing I've noticed, having gone back to this after watching the show. The girl that you're mentioning, I believe her name was Kat or Catherine. She is so much better in the show. Like I like the actress in the show is so much better, and like they
Oh,
expand her role and everything. It's interesting how they take, because there's kind of like a mentor relationship between Seth and Catherine at the end, because they're like the only two alive, and she respects him for saving her life, and they really expand on that in the show. And I need to get back to that and see how they build on that. But well, the nice thing is that at least that show was distributed by Netflix as well, so a lot of that shows it still on Netflix, or at least it was. So yeah, I mean it's a pretty straightforward movie. The first half is just we're on the run, like we're trying to avoid the cops, and that stuff is fun. But at least for me, I think the movie really comes alive once you get to the bar, which funnily enough is called the Titty Twister.
yeah, that's right.
I love this movie's sense of humor. Uh,
Yeah, it's
uh,
really funny.
I love at the beginning when they set that clerk on fire and he falls into the popcorn. You just hear the popcorn popping as he burns alive.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. It's got that really brilliant Tarantino dark comedy going
Mhm.
on. It's great. Um, there's other funny moments like that too.
Yeah. There's also some gross stuff. Like I didn't need to see Quentin Tarantino sucking on Salma Hayek's foot ever.
Yeah, I mean, I just with like Tarantino stuff, I just kind of expect that
Yeah,
in
that's
a
fair.
way. So I kind of understood like, yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah, it doesn't
Um,
bring my score down or anything.
oh yeah, for sure, for sure. And I mean, they're doing stuff with that character, but yeah, I understand where you're coming from.
Mhm.
It's interesting how that was a thing. Um, she
And
does a good job. Did you know that she's like deathly afraid of snakes, Selma Hayek?
really,
Yeah, so she had to like I don't even know what she did, but she was apparently like in like a trance while doing it. Like she herself like was in a trance at doing it or whatever, just to get through that process. It's very interesting.
that's fascinating. The other
Uh,
scene that really makes me laugh is the when Tom Savini is turning. Um,
yeah,
and like that the other guy is like telling it like how he was in Vietnam and stuff, and then it shifts back to his perspective and you just see these like claws like moving up his shoulders like it's out of a fucking cartoon or something. It makes me laugh every time.
Oh yeah, for sure, and that's definitely a Rodriguez thing. He likes to go very cartoony.
Yeah, and
Um,
there's definitely a lot of that in this movie.
mhm.
The sound effects for Sex Machine's like whip at when you first get to the bar is hilarious, and he whips that like beer out of that guy's hand.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. Um, yeah, and also I think the sound design in this movie is really good as well. Like
Mm-hmm.
if when someone gets punched, you really feel it, which is
Oh,
cool.
definitely.
But that's a Rodriguez thing, absolutely. He tends to have really neat attention to detail with the sound design of these kinds of movies.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Let's see. I do like that we don't have that mandatory oh, this is insane, vampires aren't real scene, and I think it's handled really well in that they don't believe in vampires, but they do believe what they're seeing.
Oh yeah, that's a really
Cuz
funny scene, and I like that they are acknowledging that this is in fact vampires. Like they're not trying to like skirt around the bushes of like what it is. Like it just is what it is. So
yeah.
that's cool.
And I remember now. So the vampires in this are like Aztecian in origin, because the last shot of the movie is the titty twister being revealed to be above a partially buried Aztec temple. So the vampire designs in this are nothing like I've ever really seen before or after in the movie, which makes me really appreciate what they did with this.
And they bleed green.
The
Is
bleed
also interesting.
green.
Yeah.
I wonder if that was to avoid an X rating, like with what Raimi did in Evil Dead 2.
I think it was. I can't remember where it was said. It might have been the commentary track. But I believe that they do specify that that is the reason why it's like that. Like that commentary track is really funny. They when they get to the part with the kid dying, like they are like, yeah, no, like the kid got it worse than everyone in the movie, which is pretty crazy. That they went there.
Because she shoots him and everything just explodes for some reason.
Jesus Christ! Wow.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, he was good. I like that kid. He did a good
I
job.
don't think if there's anything else. Movies like this, it's pretty straightforward. It's just like you're there for the ride. I do think this rises above just being like schlock. Like, I really like Seth as a character. I don't like Richie, but you're like, not in like, oh, I hate this guy. It's just like, you're not supposed to like him. He's really sleazy and weird.
He's a really creepy character.
Yeah. Oh, I guess that's the other thing we should talk about is the weird scene where he imagines Catherine or Kate. Kate, that's what they call her.
Hey, that's right.
Asking him to eat her out, and I was just like, dude, there's no way this girl is even 18 or supposed to be.
Yeah, that was messed up. Well, because they also they definitely draw attention to his kind of predatory nature. Like he's a registered sex offender, right? Like this guy,
He
so
has to be.
it makes sense.
Well, what's
Um,
weird is then they do it again with the border inspector.
oh, okay, that's
Because
right. Yeah.
he insists that he come in and he just like stares at her sitting on the toilet.
Oh,
And
Jesus
that,
Christ.
yeah, that's the only scene where I'm like, oh, this is really uncomfortable.
Yeah, yeah. Um, what was I gonna say? Well, and they also, yeah, no, yeah, that's interesting that they did that. I actually forgot about that moment, but you're right, it's there.
Mentioning the sense of humor as well. I love the second character that Cheech plays because he plays three different characters in this movie, and
And I'm never taken out. Like it just works.
yeah, it just works. But I love that his main scene is just describing every type of pussy that this bar has, and I'm like, what the fuck does that even mean?
Oh, that's great. No, that's really funny.
Because he's
I
like,
love
we've
how
got cold
elaborate.
pussy, hot pussy, dog pussy. I'm like, what the fuck is a cold pussy?
No, yeah, yeah, yeah. Like he's going off. Like he's excited. And I really like how elaborate everything is with the titty twister. I think it's really fun.
Yeah, and all the
It's very.
mythology is thought out.
I'm sorry, you're saying something?
Oh, I just saying the mythology was thought out.
Yeah, I totally agree. But I was just gonna say it feels very comic booky. Like this feels like maybe it's just because like Robert Rodriguez just like has those sensibilities or whatever. But like it kind of feels like not an EC horror comic, but like maybe something from like the 70s,
Mhm.
maybe. That kind of a thing, where it's very, very exaggerated and fun, while also being kind of like has a sense of grit.
Well, and I think that would just go back to this was supposed to be a Tales from the Crypt movie. Plus, you've got Tarantino, whose sensibilities are very grit and crime oriented. Um,
Hmm.
like I imagine that the geckos are completely different characters under the penmanship of someone else.
Absolutely. They're probably, yeah, like they're probably like borderline. They're probably like likable.
Mm-hmm.
Is the thing. If it was like someone else writing it, actually, when I think about it, like I think Seth would actually be like a likable person. You know, isn't afraid of writing characters who are just completely like reprehensible human beings. You know.
Well, I mean, we've covered the most of it. Like the nice thing about this movie is it's pretty simple and straightforward.
Yeah.
So unless you have anything else you want to go over, and I know I'm gonna remember like 6 things that I wanted to go over once we finish recording, but because that's how it always
Mm.
goes.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Interestingly enough, this was a January release. This movie is much better than
Oh.
a January release.
Oh God, really? I didn't realize that. That's interesting. Well, um, I get it was a different time back then, right? I mean, were they always releasing movies like that? Because that's a thing that we do now. Where we
That's true.
release the like, but it is interesting. It is pretty funny to think that this is a January release because it's like, well, first of all, it fits much better with like October. Like this is a total Halloween movie, I think.
Absolutely.
Um, but it's also just funny because of what it is now, the January movies.
So this is interesting. This was the cinematography on this movie was done by Guillermo Navarro,
Yeah,
who
Guillermo Navarro. Yeah.
who worked on Spy Kids, Pan's Labyrinth, Hellboy 2.
Yes.
And I think that's part of why this looks as good as it does.
Oh, sure. Yeah, he also worked with Rodriguez on Desperado, I believe. Like
Yep.
he definitely gets around with cinematography and all that jazz. He's good. Him and Bill Pope, I think, are my two favorite cinematographers.
Oh God,
I
he
think they're
also did
both
the
very
Twilight
good.
Saga Breaking Dawn.
Oh, Navarro.
Yeah.
Mm, I haven't seen those movies in a long time. So maybe I don't know. I haven't seen them in a very long time, so maybe it's like different. But yeah, that was definitely an interesting time in history when those movies were a thing. You remember the hysteria with those movies? People were like going crazy over that stuff.
I was
It's
in high
crazy.
school.
I was in like middle school, I think, when the last two movies were coming out.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
middle school. Yeah.
But yeah, my final thoughts for this movie are it's a wonderful, fun little movie. You should
Hmm.
absolutely watch it if you like Robert Rodriguez, if you like Quentin Tarantino, or if you just like vampires and you're sick of the traditional vampire, because this is anything but a traditional vampire story. And I would
Absolutely.
like to check out the sequels at some point. I've never seen
Oh,
them.
okay. Well, that's good to know. Oh yeah, we forgot to mention Danny Trejo. He's awesome as always in this movie.
Yeah, yeah. I love how he like tries to kick Seth Gecko out, and I love his little vampire face. It's
Oh
so
yeah.
weird.
Oh, I guess we forgot to mention that like the way the vampires like, turn into vampires is interesting. It's like over the course of time, like it's almost like they're like infected
It's
with
very zombie
vampirism.
esque.
Yeah, which makes sense because I Am Legend, which kind of started like the post-apocalyptic, not started it, but like it would go like Night of the Living Dead is kind of taking cues from I Am Legend, but like they're not zombies.
Mhm.
In I Am Legend, they're vampires. And in this movie, they're vampires, but it's kind of going back to the I Am Legend thing, where it's like an infection of vampirism, which is interesting, but not exactly that. They don't point it out like that.
Yeah, uh, they just bite you, and at some point you'll turn. Sometimes it's innocent, like that Vietnam veteran, whose vampire face makes me laugh every time it pops up on screen. Uh,
Yeah, absolutely.
or you've got like the preacher who takes like an hour to turn for some reason. Oh, I also love the effect when like half the preacher's head is missing after he's turned into a vampire. I
Oh
thought that
yeah,
was fun.
yeah. But I like that they take advantage of the well they understand that they do have a preacher there, so they're like, oh yeah, like these things like are weak against like holy imagery and stuff like that. We have a preacher, so that whole thing is really good, and like having him kind of get his faith back was an interesting angle to go. That was a plot used in a Hammer Dracula movie, I believe, where I believe there's like an atheist main character in one of the movies, and over the course of the film, he has to find his faith in order to fight Dracula. So they kind of recontextualize that with a faithless preacher in this movie, which is cool. Um,
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think we're gonna move on to the final thoughts. I've given mine. What final thoughts do you have for this movie, Doolittle?
Um, it's just a very, very fun time. Definitely watch it like with friends, watch it by yourself, watch it anywhere, watch it in a hot tub, you know. Watch it in the shower. It's a good movie. It's really fun. I think it's my favorite, or one of my favorite Rodriguez movies. I'm currently going through his filmography. I think this is still probably somewhere in like my top five, in the higher echelon of Rodriguez's filmography. It's really good, and I hope that he and Tarantino do stuff in the future together in this same similar way, where Tarantino does the screenplay and Rodriguez directs, because I think they're a really good team and they're very good friends. So
I
good
would
stuff.
agree with that. Yeah, I'm with you on this. Is probably my favorite Rodriguez film that I have seen. I'm not going through all of his filmography at the moment like you. I am probably gonna rate this a little higher than it deserves, but I just love everything about this movie. So I'm gonna give it one of those rare 5 out of 5s on our letterbox scale.
Yeah, I'll give it a 5 out of 5.
Hell yeah, dude! All right.
I'll give it 5 out of 5. Yeah.
All right. Well, that has been our discussion for From Dusk Till Dawn. This will probably be uploaded first, so there will be 2 uploads tomorrow, Sunday, August 29th. We're going to move on to The Faculty, and that will be a separate video. So I hope to see you guys there, and we'll be back shortly.
Awesome.